Hey, it's me, Mark, and I just wanted to interrupt the video and say that I opened a website. And on there, you'll see like all the sculptures I made on the channel on sale, and including some of these figures soon. Uh, Anyways, I hope you like the video. So a couple of months ago, I bought a bunch of broken toys on eBay for like 10 or 20 bucks. As you see, here's a few pictures of them as they were advertised. Then got them in a box. Here's what they look like before I start fucking with them. I was most excited about the Gigan because Gigan's cool. And then there's a no-arm Imperial Godzilla. And he threw in like a little Godzilla and head arm. And with that arm, I'm going to snip that off. And then I'll basically just sand down the original figure spot, and that way you'll get a good spot to glue it and fit perfectly, or at least good enough. Ta-da! Alright, now onto the Ghidorah. So for this, I'm going to use some two-part epoxy. As you see, I just kind of mix those two together, and then I'll have like a working time of a few hours. And you'll watch me struggle to sculpt scales for a good minute or so. As you see, the necks are actually pretty thin, so I don't have to add too much more clay. I start trying to sculpt the scales by doing a zigzag pattern. As you see, that doesn't work out too well, but thankfully it's not going to be the most visible spot. And I just keep messing around with it until it looks good. I made the little collar right there really quickly. And then again, I try to redo the scales. Once I'm done with it, I paint it gold, and I can just super glue it right on. Ta-da! Now onto the cool Gigan. So this one started out like a puzzle, a bunch of broken pieces. So I start super gluing those together. The back was originally not broken, but in between filming I dropped it and it fell apart even more. And I want to put it back together in a way that it still moves, so what I do is spray some mold release onto the joints. That way when I use the two-part epoxy to fix it back on, it won't make it stuck. Does that make sense? And then the pattern for the blue part is pretty easy. It's just like a stroking fur thingy, so I had a lot of fun with that. And you see I wiggle it every now and then to make sure that it still can move. And then to the hip part is a little more complicated because it's a bigger gap. So initially I tried putting it in there and then adding more clay. Once it has a good base, I can start working more on the pattern. Man, I think I should have sped this up a little more. Anyways, how was your day? Strange viewer who I never... Oh, now we're doing paint. So, now I just get some blue and some white so I can try to color match it the best I can. And once I feel like it's good enough, I start laying it on there. And now onto King Ghidorah. So for this one, it actually took the longest to make since there was a big cut between filming. As you see here, initially I tried to use some foam clay with some gold. The plan was that like it'll still be bendy and I could move it around. Which you can do, but I took a little too long in between takes, and so as you see here, I redid it with some super sculpting because it kind of dried out. So this time again, I'm trying to do the scales by hand, and not doing very well. So I have a great idea of just making a stamp of the scales that are already done. So what you do is press the clay right in, you get the pattern, and with that pattern, you can just stamp it onto the clay. And then for the tips, I used a pencil. Kind of gave up at the tip of the tail, but it's good enough. Now into the Godzilla. So, of course, you're supposed to make an armature before you add the clay, but I was feeling a little lazy, so I just used the clay as an armature. Bake that off screen while I reposition the right arm. And then just super glue it a little more. And after those little pieces are baked, I could glue them right on. And then because I didn't spend enough time making the armature that well, I had to save down with the razor. And then I could just use some epoxy clay. Brain dead. Yeah, it's a little annoying to work with. I personally get stressed out with like the limited working time. Off screen, I had to redo the hand a few times. A lot of this stuff was done off screen. And you see I start out with like some little noodles, and then I use the Dremel to fix it all up. And then after I add some black and some gray, I start working on the teeth. And then I should have used a smaller paintbrush for this part, but too late. And there's the finished product. Then here's a little bonus figure that the guy gave us. So I start out by making 3 little rows of the fins with some, this is super sculpting. And once those rows are good enough, I'm going to start cutting them up into little plates. Just like that. And I actually have a video about sculpting Godzilla plates, an older one if you want to check that out. And then once those bigger plates are done, I add smaller little divots in there. Okay, so I got the boiling water right here, and I got the little toy right here. The idea is that I put this in, and the water is hot enough to cook the clay, but not melt down the toy. I think I'll just wait for it to boil, then we'll try that. I think it is ready. Alright, so for this one, I wanted it to make it look like Godzilla was coming out of the water. So I start out with bulking out the clay, the figure with clay. And as you see, I start working out the fins. And unlike the Ghidorah scales, it's a lot easier to make Godzilla scales. What you do is basically just poke it a bunch of times until it looks good. Which you see right here. You kind of want to get the teardrop pattern, if that explains it a little more. But I mean, he was meant to be a dinosaur that was survived a nuclear bombing, so I think a little craziness is good at that point. Then I baked it off screen, plugged the head back in, and now I can add some paint. Yeah, I think I only added like a little bit of black to the green, and after that I can just add some silver to the fins, and I think it's pretty good from there on. And here's the final reveal of all the figures. Ta-da!